Hello and welcome to Just Films and That. This is the podcast that celebrates films we reckon might be underrated, underseen, or sometimes we just wanted to talk about them. I'm your host for this week, Alice Oliver. With me, as always, is Josh Hallam, and it was his turn to pick the film this week, and he went with Man of Steel from 2013. So let's see what we have to say about this one. So then, Josh, Man of Steel, 2013.
Indeed.
I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I'm excited about this.
I think you probably tell I was a bit excited after my reaction last week when you said you were going to be picking this. So we are doing Man of Steel this week, listeners. So spoiler warnings if you have not seen it yet. So Josh, do tell us, what is the film about and why did you pick it?
Okay, so a few reasons. About this time last year, roughly, you picked Superman 2, which you still think you might have meant to pick Superman 3.
Yeah, but you know what? I have no regrets. I have absolutely no regrets because Superman 2, is rated very highly. But after watching it again, I was like, you know what? If this ain't 100%, then it's underrated. It's underrated.
So when you picked Superman 2, I looked at other Superman films, and obviously Man of Steel is one of those. And I looked at the score and I thought, God, that's a lot lower than I thought it would be. So I added it to my list, and I thought, well, what better time to do it than about a year since the last Superman film? And equally, this film is 10 years old this year. It's obviously not 10 years old. It's released in the summer, but it's 10 years old this year. So that's why I picked it. I've picked it because it's not underseen, but I believe it is underrated. Before we do get started, though, I want to say this isn't about the DCU. This isn't about the Snyder Cut. This isn't about any of the Marvel versus DC. You know, it was all a conspiracy and DC's better. It's not about any of that bollocks. I don't want to talk about that. There's plenty of people doing that. This is about the film Man of Steel and the fact that I think it's underrated. I don't really have a dog in the fight of that whole thing because I just think, well,
who gives a shit?
I'll buy my sweets from whichever sweet shop will sell me my sweets.
Yeah, whichever sweets you like at the time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So it's not about that. This is about the film Man of Steel, not about what came after it, not about any of that. It's just about the film. So I think we know the answer. You'd seen this one before, right?
I had seen this one before, and before it came out, when there was like news that it was going to come out, I was really excited. Like, I don't know why. I don't know if it was because obviously I love the old Superman films, so I think a bit of that kind of nostalgia hit was kind of creeping in. But I was so excited when I see that this was coming out. Watched it when it came out. Have seen it a few times since. So I've always really liked this film. I've always really liked this film.
I did get that impression
and,
from your reaction. If you'd have gone, I was so excited because I think this is wank.
Yeah, and I'm about to tear you down, Josh. I'm going to tear you down. So with this one, so I'm not sure how you do your list of films, right? But I have my hard list, which is a written down list that I keep in my phone. And then I've got like my straddler list of films that I sometimes think in my head, oh, could I put that on the list? No, maybe I shouldn't. And I go back and forth with it. And this was one of those films. It's a straddler film for me. So almost on my list, but not quite. So again, why I was very excited when you chose it.
Right, I see. So generally speaking, you have a good relationship with this film. You liked it. So, well, in that case, let's see what we thought then. So, go on then. Do you want to go first or shall I go first?
No, I think, Josh, this is your pick. I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me what you love about this film. Because I've got to say, I am surprised that you think this is underrated. I didn't think you would. So also why I'm excited to do this episode. So go on, lay it on me.
Okay. So look, before we go on to that, it's not a perfect film. We'll come on to that later, but we're all about the optimism, the positivity, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So for me, main strengths are the way it looks, the way it sounds, the cast, those sort of little movie magic Superman moments, and the film, generally speaking, as a Superman film. So let's talk about how it looks and how it sounds. I think that this film, even now, looks amazing because it's a mixture between, stylistically for me, and some of the stuff I say might sound ridiculous, but I'm going to say it anyway because you know what? It's our podcast. But there are bits of it where it jumps between looking like obviously it's a high budget film, right? It's a massively, massively expensive film. But there's a bit where it jumps between very much looking like a very, very expensive film and also looking a little bit like an indie film with Superman in it. And I really, really like that. So, for starters, Krypton. It looks brilliant for me. It looks the best it's ever looked. I know that it's, the older films are sort of fighting their fight with one arm tied around the back. But the moment, there are moments and shots in this where Jor-El, who is Superman's dad, played by Russell Crowe, is looking out on basically Krypton dissolving and exploding. And it just looks incredible. The way it sort of looks like it could be a version of Earth, but it's not. I really like that. The way all the props and the costumes and, things like the codex and all that look, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. There's some really, really great camera work in this. There's bits where you're watching Superman fight, and it's done in a way that I think is done I don't know if it is done this way or appears to be done this way. It's like handheld. So the bit, for example, where Faora, who is one of Zod's sort of generals or corporals or whatever, is one of his underlings, is fighting Superman in a shop. And it's like you're watching it there because it's all done so quickly. It's not slowed down. It's not done with any perception to the point where it's like, oh, well, because they would be moving so fast, you have to slow it down. Which is surprising when you sort of think about what Zack Snyder's famous for in terms of that slow-mo thing of 300 and Watchmen and stuff like that. But I really like the camera work. There's the scene where he's fighting Faora in the shop. There's the scene where he first learns to fly, and it appears like when he is flying, you're almost watching it with a God's eye view, as if you're a drone watching him or a bird watching him or whatever. So I thought that was really, really great. So overall, I think it looks great. I love the Superman costume. I just realised as well, we haven't said what it's about. But it's
Guys,
a Superman film.
It's Superman,
it's
right?
Superman,
Superman is a baby on Krypton. The planet's dissolving. His parents send him to Earth,
and then it's good.
He finds Jonathan and Martha Kent. They raise him. He meets Lois Lane. They have a kiss. Etc. Zod's here. He's bad.
Snog. Yeah. So it looks amazing. It sounds amazing, whether that's the sound effects or Hans Zimmer's score. I love Hans Zimmer's score. So one of my favorite pieces of music from a superhero film is the song that's just called Flight, which is surprisingly when he first learns to fly. So that's one of the main things of how it looks and it sounds. I'll move on to the next sort of points I've got in a minute, but I think I want to come to you first. What do you think of how it looks and how it sounds?
I mean, it's just absolutely striking. Like, completely agree with everything you just said, pretty much. The whole visual style of the film I just find completely engaging. So there's so much dramatic imagery in this, like oil rigs blowing up, or the whole fishing boat accident sequence, all the stuff on Krypton, and then some of the combat action sequences as well, where there's like trains being flown through the air and planes crashing into buildings. Some of it really feels like a war film at times, and I love that. And there's such a great use of color and texture here as well, and I thought it looked great, and obviously the sound just complements that brilliantly. I'm completely with you there.
Okay. Well, I'll move on to my next point about the sort of cast and stuff in a minute. But what else do you like? What do you like about it?
So I really like the concept and the story, right? So it's Superman, but he's a bit darker. He doesn't seem afraid to scare people. He comes across as a little bit selfish and a bit spiteful as well. Like when he gets into a slight altercation with a man at the bar he works at, he completely and violently destroys his truck in such a dramatic way that it really sends a message. And the message for me is, next time this will be you. And I'm a huge fan of the fact that at the end, spoilers again, listeners, just in case, that he snaps Zod's neck, right? This gives me the sort of satisfaction that I was missing at the end of Superman 2, right? Where he just sort of throws Zod off screen and then that's the end of it and you don't really know what happened. So I found this incredibly satisfying. I'm a huge fan of dark Superman, just dark superheroes in general. Like when I think about like the Dark Knight trilogy and that, I love that trilogy, but I often wonder what could have been if those films had all been rated 18, right? But then, so back to Zod and Superman. So the thing about the neck snap as well is that it feels like it was controversial, but it feels like a very human way to kill someone. Like, I know obviously your average Joe, and like definitely not me, are ever going to kill someone with their bare hands in this way.
You've never snapped anybody's neck.
No. You know, I've tried, given it a go. I've not got the forearm strength, Josh. I've told you this.
They always get away, don't they? And then you have to get off the bus and get the next bus. And
exactly. Oh, it's just a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. One day I will get my revenge. But because he's not decapitating him with his laser eyes, and he's not pushing a building onto him or, you know, flying him to the moon and crushing his head in with moon rocks. It just feels like so raw and just like such a human way to kill someone. And there's just something so horrifying about that, and like the normality of it. And then that sort of warpy reverberation effect that comes off him as he does it, that ripples through him. I just thought it was absolutely excellent, and such a sophisticated way to demonstrate how strong he is. Like, everything else is just so, oh yeah, he can lift a bus, and oh yeah, he can push a boat upright, and you know, he can fly back around the world backwards so quickly that everything goes back in time, you know, that sort of thing. And this, it was just like, no, I'm just going to snap his fucking neck.
Yeah, so I've changed my mind on the neck snap.
Oh, tell me what you think about.
So when I went to see this at the cinema, I very much came out of it like, nah, Superman wouldn't kill anybody. He's too much of a Boy Scout.
Right, yeah.
And I was very much like, no. But then I actually think what I like in this is that he gives him no choice.
He gives him no choice. He says, don't do this. Zod is literally about to kill like a family of 4.
And I think it's meant to be. I think the point is it is a learning Superman.
Yeah.
So I think he's young, he's learning. There's a bit in that which is also a flaw of the film, which we'll come back to. But I think the point of that is he's a young Superman. He doesn't fully know what he's doing yet. At the end of the day, Zod and all of his underlings are soldiers, right? Mm-hmm. And the only advantage that Superman has in this film is that he has lived on Earth already.
Yeah, he gets it.
There's nothing that you see that he has any combat training or any ability to fight. He just is strong and is fast. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they were endowed with the same powers as him, well, that'd be like saying, well, who would stand a chance in a fight, me or a highly trained soldier? Mm-hmm. But we've both had 3 months to go to the gym. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, I can do all the weights and eat all the protein I want, but if I don't train in combat, he'll still batter me. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So I think I like the idea that he makes the decision of, I'll never be able to stop him. Mm. He's already, he's not going to be able to arrest him, is he? Where's he going to keep him? Because in the Superman 2, they put him back in the Phantom Zone. Yeah. But the Phantom Zone in this is a ship. Mm-hmm. Because the whole Fortress of Solitude Phantom Zone thing in this is they're actually just warships. They're not actually they're not like some sort of spooky space sci-fi prison. They're just a ship, right? So at first, I have changed my mind on the neck snap. I think the whole idea is he gave him no choice. It was his last resort. It was him, or effectively, this guy could lay waste to the whole planet if he wanted to. Mm-hmm. And so he did it. And at the end, he's not happy about it, is he? He's not like, oh well, no, job done. Yeah. He's he's crying, he's upset, and all because he's effectively, and it's unclear, is he upset because he's killed one of his own, or is he just upset because he had to kill somebody?
Yeah.
So I don't mind that I have changed my mind on that. Just to touch on what you said there as well, I completely agree. I love those little moments. So the bit where he absolutely batters the guy's truck in the bar. What I like is the moment that precursors that, where the guy tries to shove him.
Yeah, and he just doesn't budge, right?
It's like he's trying to push a house over.
Exactly, very similar to Terminator 2. We have a very similar moment in that as well.
I love that bit. I love the bit where he Zod attacks his mother. Mm-hmm. So he punches him while screaming, "You dare to threaten my mother!" I love that bit. I like that's what I mean. The whole bit is he's not actually doesn't fucking know what he's doing.
No, he's out of control. He's 33. He's a bit like a teenager.
Yeah, they say he's sort of 33, but it's quite clear that what's happened is he's just sort of drifted. Mm-hmm. So he appears to his, obviously Jonathan and Martha Kent know about him because they have adopted him and they know all that. So he seems to sort of drift and occasionally go back home and stay with them. Mm-hmm. And then go and drift some more and figure out what it is he's meant to do or whatever. So I like those little Superman moments. The bit where he stands up and breaks the handcuffs like they're nothing.
Like it's
like he's ripping a piece of toilet roll off. Like I think that's absolutely brilliant. So those little Superman moments and I think really really make it. And it is a more serious feeling take on Superman. Mm-hmm. And I think we've done more serious Batman and we've done more serious, but I think there's something about the tone of this one that really works and really set everything up to be like, okay, we could really build from this now. As I say, we're not talking about what happened next, but it does break my heart a little bit. But anyway, so is there anything else for you, or should we go on to talking about the cast and the film as a Superman film?
Well, the next point that I do have is about the cast. So that was a great segue,
Let's
Josh.
hear it
It's
then.
like he's reading my mind, listeners. So
Cast
I
of
do
steel.
believe, very good.
Thank you.
So I do believe that some of the casting in this is strong. So Michael Shannon as Zod, I do think is a great choice, right? And these were some seriously big shoes to fill for me because Terrence Stamp as Zod is one of the most sublime things I've ever seen. It might be, Josh, my favourite performance of all time. I was thinking about it.
Terrence
Stamp, yeah, because I was thinking about it while I was watching this, and I was just kneel before Zod. Like, I kept thinking of just the way he speaks and his presence and everything.
They went different with this one, didn't they?
They did go different.
They went, we can't do megalomaniac.
No.
So let's go psychopath.
Yeah, but it does work, and I do think Shannon was a good choice here.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant in everything.
He is good, isn't he? He's one of them. He's always he
like
always
Alice
feels
and
quite
Janney.
striking. Yeah,
he just delivers. He turns up and you go, okay, I'm in good hands.
Yeah,
I'm in good hands.
Oh, yeah, I get
it's gonna be fine.
I've read the script. I know what my character's about. I get this.
I watched Bullet Train the other day.
Oh, I've not seen it.
And he turns up in that. He turns up in that for about 20 minutes, and he's just like, "Oh yeah, Michael's here.
There we go.
Be fine.
He's here to rescue.
He's definitely going to kill everybody on screen, but he's fine." But I mean, the bit in this where they're putting them in the Phantom Zone and he's speaking to Lara, who's Superman's mum. For me, that is top tier comic book villain acting.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Oh, you think he's safe? You think he's safe?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll find him." And you're like, "Oh fuck, he's gonna find him."
Menacing, right? Yeah, absolutely menacing.
He's so. I mean, he's. I think he's an outstanding and underrated actor, Michael Shannon. But he's great in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really enjoyed him, and I was really pleased with it because I was always going to be very judgmental of this because of the precursor of Superman 2. But no, I was very impressed. I do also think that Henry Cavill is a good choice as Superman, specifically. Maybe not necessarily his Clark Kent, which I don't think is as strong. And I do apologize for this, and I'm going to try and not fall and hark back to Superman 2 all the time, but it's difficult because I love it. But one of the things that I love about Christopher Reeve is that he was an excellent Clark Kent and Superman, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so do you think, and when you're talking about Clark Kent, I think we need to differentiate between the Clark Kent who he is privately and the Clark Kent who works at the Daily Planet. Do you mean both of those, or do you mean the public-facing Clark Kent nerdy journalist that he doesn't quite nail that?
I think it's both of them. I think it's when he's trying to behave all human-y, when he's allowed to just be Superman, when he's allowed to just be his authentic Kal-El self. It works with Henry Cavill because he's got. So my feelings about Henry Cavill are very similar to my feelings about Keanu Reeves, right? I do not think they are the best actors in the world, and they do not always give great performances, but there are certain roles where whatever it is that they're doing just works.
Born to do it, innit? It's like Craig David.
Exactly. And with Henry Cavill in this, him as Superman works. It just totally works for me.
It's like The Witcher. I gave up on The Witcher, but I could see that he was just born to play Geralt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that he wasn't the problem. I just sort of went, not for me. Stop watching.
Wasn't for you.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I do think he's very, very well cast as Superman. That nerdy side of Clark Kent, completely agree. But I would counter that with doesn't get a chance to do it.
Not much in this. Not in this
obviously,
one. We're sort of projecting forward a little bit there.
And in the other ones, again, even in the other ones, he doesn't get loads of opportunities to do it. He probably gets the most time is in Batman versus Superman. And even then, you're like, you're not fucking nerdy. You're like a guy who walks straight out of the high school football team into a journalist job. Like you're too, and obviously, he's almost, Henry Cavill's one of these people. He's like a Margot Robbie. He's almost objectively attractive, chiseled guy. Looks like a Greek statue, right? Without, I don't think that's an unfair thing to say. So you have to do things to make him look a bit nerdier. And what they do in this is put some glasses on him.
Yeah, I know, and that's kind of it. Whereas obviously Christopher Reeve just
got the slick hair,
held himself so differently. His posture, his mannerisms, everything about him changed.
That is what Reeve does much better than Henry Cavill. Is that differentiation? Granted, he gets far more of a chance to do it.
Yeah, certainly.
But he does do it better when he is given a chance to do it. So
Yeah.
so happy with Cavill as Superman?
Happy with Cavill as Superman. A little bit disappointed that obviously he's not coming back. And I think, is it James Gunn who's taking on the new Superman
with David
films?
Corenswet.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
I mean, the guy looks like Superman.
Ollie says visually he just looks like Superman.
Spot on.
So, but I'll give it a
It's
chance.
like when they cast Tom Holland as Peter Parker and everyone went, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Skinny white guy. Yeah,
yeah,
works.
Little nerdy white guy. That's fair enough, yeah. So I mean, look, I'm really excited to see what James Gunn does with it. Obviously, James Gunn's fantastic. David Corenswet, I don't know much about. He looks like Superman. Rachel Brosnahan, who's been cast as Lois Lane, is a phenomenal actor. So if you've not seen her in Mrs. Maisel, at Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, you should check that out. She's brilliant in it. Really excited to see what happens, but I am a little bit heartbroken that we won't get to see Henry Cavill. And I am, again, I'm not here to talk about how it went, but I am a little bit heartbroken that he just didn't get anything beyond this. I mean, even when they announced Batman versus Superman, they did the big announcement. They had Harry Lennox Kelly, who plays the general in this, who then is retconned to be Martian Manhunter in the Snyder Cut. He did this. So there's a very famous bit of dialogue in The Dark Knight Returns about Batman beating Superman and saying it's it's a famous bit of dialogue. I'm not going to repeat it if you don't know it, because I don't know it off the top of my head. But they made a little teaser trailer, and that was like, oh, it's going to be Batman and Superman. Everyone went mental, and then I even then, before Batman versus Superman came out, I remember thinking, this is too soon, because what happens in this film is we end up with the world knows who Superman is, but he's not. Superman will save us. He's established. So I think they tried to catch up with Marvel too quickly by going, oh, let's just fucking lump it all in, and then we'll catch up with the Avengers in 4 films or whatever it is. So my heart does break a little bit for the fact that we get more Henry Cavill as well. Another thing on the cast as well, I think Russell Crowe is very, very well cast as his dad. I think he does a good job in this. And I do also want to shout out as well, I think Amy Adams is pretty good. I think some people aren't that keen on her take, but I like that they give her stuff to do where she's actually a journalist. And she gets to kick a little bit of ass as well. But I know you've mentioned there's some issues with the casting that isn't perfect, which I don't have issues with the casting, which I'll come on to, but there is a particular treatment of a character that I want to come on to. So is there anything else for you in terms of what you liked?
So just touching on what you said there about Russell Crowe. So I thought that Russell Crowe as Jor-El, when he's the hologram AI type thing on Earth speaking to Superman, I think that's really good and really strong. And I preferred him as the dead hologram dad type thing than I did when he was just himself on Krypton, which I did find a little bit less convincing and a little bit cheesy at times.
Oh, really?
I did, yeah. But this made me realise something, right? And so this whole film for me, weird relationship with this film, right? Like, it's almost like I can see its flaws. Its flaws are glaring, yet there's something about it that just drags me in and pulls me in. And I think part of that is that it makes me realise other things about the older Superman films that maybe I hadn't noticed before or just hadn't realised, and that sort of thing. So when he's being the AI and he's all like, he's very robotic, he's very inhuman, he's just sort of very stoic and stuff. And it reminded me of in Superman 2 when Superman is speaking to his mum in the Fortress of Solitude and she's being really robotic and inhuman and like just describing what's going to happen to him when he loses his powers. Like she's just, you will bleed like a real man. You will die like a real man. So then when she steps towards him and touches his face and says, oh, my love, are you sure? Like it just hits so much harder. And I never really understood why when I was watching it, like why I found that moment so emotional and why it had such an impact. But then seeing Russell Crowe and the difference between how he is when he's his human self on Krypton and then when he's being this robotic AI thing, whatever it is, on Earth, it just made me realize that it's because of that sort of change in tone and change in demeanor. Like she goes from being this AI, this sort of disembodied AI voice to then just being his mum. So stuff like that is what makes watching Man of Steel, I think, enjoyable for me and just that little bit more fun because it's like, oh, that's why that moment was so impactful. It's because she goes from being like, you will die a real man, and then it's like, oh no, she's just his mum. She's just a mum who's worried about her kids, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So Russell Crowe's performance in this helped me realize that. Therefore, this is a long-winded way to get to my point. Therefore, I appreciated it. Right then, so we'll move on to talking about anything that we didn't like about the film, or perhaps anything that we would change. And we are both sensible, reasonable people. And I think we know that there is a lot wrong with this film. So let's get into it, Josh.
Indeed.
Lay it on me. What are you thinking?
I've got sort of a couple of little things, and I've got one bigger thing that's a real issue for me. What do you want to hear first?
Hit me with the big one. Let's go in hard.
Okay, the big one. And I've actually mentioned it also on another podcast, I think on Top 10. Mm-hmm. Now, I initially said that I thought Kevin Costner was miscast as Jonathan Kent. I don't think that. I think my issue is not him. It's his death.
Yeah.
His death is, and I can't I can't think of any other way of saying it. It's fucking stupid.
It's bad, and it is stupid.
He's killed. Stupid. So the whole point of Jonathan Kent's death, for me anyway, as a fan of the character, of the comics, and of all that, is that some people Superman can't save. Mm-hmm. You can't, he's got all this power. You can't save someone from having a heart attack, or cancer, or disease, or other illness, right? And so the way they get around that is going, what if we put him in a situation where he could definitely save it?
Definitely save it. It's only a tornado. I mean, Superman's faster than a tornado.
He just doesn't. Doesn't save his dad.
Kevin Costner
because his dad goes, out. Don't save me.
Holds his hand out.
You're all right.
Shakes his head.
Yeah,
shakes his head
will.
Like that.
I'll tell you what I'll do, Dad. I'll save you, and you can be angry at me.
Yeah, fuck
at least you're alive. Because at the end of the day, you could pick him up and fly off without anyone seeing.
Exactly. You're fast, Superman. You're so fast.
You could just overturn the car and then put him back under the car once the hurricane's gone and go, he's sort of a bit hurt, but he's all right.
Yeah.
You could even say, I'm going to have to break your arm.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do something so you sustained an injury. But the fact that he just goes, don't save me, he goes, all right.
Yeah, all right. His wife has to just watch him get taken away by this tornado.
His much too young wife, which is another point. Do you know how old Diane Lane is in this film?
How old?
I don't think she's even 50.
Right, and how old's Kevin Costner?
Well, it's not the age difference between the two that's the issue, but probably it's more the fact that he says, I've been on the earth for 33 years, General. So he's 33 at this point. So she had him when she was 10. Well, she adopted him. I suppose they adopted him, so she could be much younger.
They could have adopted a 10-year-old, yeah.
No, what I mean is, there's no biological implications for her, is there? Because she adopted him. So I suppose you could adopt a kid when you are much too young for that kid to age as if you biologically had him. So maybe that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, the big one is Jonathan Kent's death. I think it's fucking stupid. The whole point of that character is that Superman can't save everybody. So that's my main big point. Other points... So I think some of the weaker moments around his childhood in Smallville, I don't think are necessary. I don't think they really do much. There's a whole load of constant scenes of his dad telling him not to do stuff and him doing it anyway. I don't really think it adds much to it. The film is 2.5 hours, and I think if you lost them, you don't really lose anything from the film. The moments in Smallville, with maybe exception of, like you say, Jonathan Kent's death or whatever. But even that, you don't need to see. You don't actually need to see it. It doesn't add anything to it. Then the final part is the sort of last 20 minutes are a bit smashy crashy, right? So I remember enjoying it and then coming out going, fucking hell, that last 20 minutes was repetitive, wasn't it? It was just that two CGI men smashing each other into buildings.
Lots of into buildings.
And to the point where, they basically decimate what would obviously be one of America's biggest and most important cities.
Well, that's why Batman was pissed off with him in the second film,
but what they then tried to do was retcon into, that's why Batman hates him, because he destroyed buildings and that it's meant to be Superman learning. I think what they tried to do is course correct their own error there. And what they actually did was they went, well, let's just have them smash the absolute shit out of each other. Because I'm not being funny. Yes, it's a young and naive Superman, but you're not telling me you couldn't just punch him into the Arctic or something.
Yeah.
Or the Sahara or the middle of Australia and be like, let's do it here.
Let's do it in the desert.
Let's do it.
Away from all the expensive buildings and architecture.
So because obviously they make it, again, spoiler warnings for Batman versus Superman, but they make a massive deal at the end of Batman vs Superman of when Doomsday is there. A helicopter pilot goes, there's no population there, sir. Like that. Because you're watching it going, well, that's thousands of people dead.
Thousands of people dead.
Tens of thousands. If you're saying Gotham is like New York and Metropolis is Washington, then it's potentially tens, hundreds of thousands of people that are killed. And I just remember looking at it thinking, I just feel like common sense would prevail and you try and get him away from that. And it just became a bit repetitive and a little bit like, I know this is a really adult, boring, square thing to say of going, they're going to have to rebuild all that.
Yeah, I know. And you would be fuming, wouldn't you? That all the money or the public money has got to go into that. It's just so careless.
And then they massively missed an opportunity in the sequel by not having Lex Luthor tidy it all up and being like, look, I tidied it all up. Everybody loves me and hates him. But anyway, that's about it for me. What about you?
So the big and the main thing for me in this is that I do think there are some really poor dialogue choices in here and some weak aspects to the script. First of all, and I feel like this is just an objective point here, there is heaps of exposition dumping in this. I personally found a lot of it unnecessary, and at times it really comes across like the filmmakers just don't trust their audience at all. So the show don't tell elements of this film are really lacking, and I thought this was a real shame. In other areas, so sentences or conversations between characters would go on just a little bit too long and go a little bit too far. Like they would just say a few words too many, like words that I didn't need added in there. So instead of a piece of dialogue feeling impactful and sophisticated, it just felt really obvious and cliched. And I've got a couple of examples of this, though there were a lot of them. But the first one is very early in the film as Jor-El and his wife Lara are preparing to send Kal to Earth. And Lara's a bit worried, obviously, about what's going to happen when he lands there. And she says, they'll kill him. To which Jor-El says, how? He'll be a god to them. And I was like, that would have been so much better if he'd just said how. If like she just said, they'll kill him, they're going to do this to him, they're going to do that to him. And he's literally just so sure of his power and his strength and his ability that he just says, how? And that was it. And I just a little thing like that, I feel like would have just been so much more powerful. Another one is with Lois Lane. And I know we spoke about sort of some of the casting and the choices and that before, but the script, the way she's written and a lot of the stuff she has to say, I think is really, really weak. And there's one part where she's asking Jimmy to either put her on a story or send her somewhere specific or something like that. And I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but what she essentially says is, come on, Jimmy, it's me you're talking to. I'm Lois Lane, the Pulitzer Prize winning reporter. I'm Lois Lane, damn it, journalist for the Daily Planet. Like it was just sort of this really lazy...
I know, you work for me. I know you are.
I know, you know everything about me, right? And it just felt so lazy. Like, I feel like you really could have shown me all these different things about her using different storytelling methods, but they didn't. And I thought this was a real theme throughout, and it is one of, if not the weakest parts of the film for me. The other two things I was going to mention, you have already mentioned, so I do agree with you on John's death. And I also really agree about the time hopping. Like when we jump back to when he's a kid, it feels really jarring and shoehorned in there. Like
I think it just doesn't... They think people expect it.
And you know what's weird about this as well is I think I do want to see that. I do want to see it, but the way they've done it is bad. The way they've done it, it doesn't flow with the rest of the film. It feels really random and just feels really jarring. And my issue now is that I can't suggest a better way to do it, but I didn't like it. But I have no suggestions on how to improve it. So that's really annoying for me, because usually when I tear something to shreds, I like to come and say, well, this is how I would have done it and I would have done it better. But having to choose whether you have all that stuff in it or not, I would have taken all that out. I do not need to see any of that. Maybe you could have the odd conversation between him and his parents where they remember when this happened, remember when that happened or whatever. But the way they've done it just did not work for me whatsoever. And just finally, and I know that this is not a fair criticism at all, and it's just something that I wanted in particular, but I would have loved to have heard a little bit more of the original Superman score just sort of mixed in or like repurposed for the score of this film. Just those few notes. I would have loved to have heard a little bit of that in what Hans Zimmer was doing. It would have given me chills. I honestly think it would have done. But yeah, that's it for me. Really complex relationship with this film that I can see that there's so much wrong with it. And the things that are wrong with it would usually ruin a film for me and cause me to say, I don't like that. But there's something about this, man. It lures me in.
There was a few films like that for me. There's like films that like, I know it's not that good. Like I know Spider-Man 3 is not that good.
Yeah.
But I'll still watch it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
can't help yourself.
I think there's a big part of it of just because I get to see it.
Yeah.
And it's back to that thing of we were never taking this for granted. So when Spider-Man 3 was coming out, it felt to me like the accumulation of everything I'd ever wanted in a film. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I was going to get to see Spider-Man and Venom, right? And then when it came out and everyone said it was shit, I was like, yeah, but Venom's still in it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Same with trying to think, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. I remember thinking like, yeah, but this is it. Like this is the peak. We get to see him become Darth Vader. Everything's built up to this. Do you know what I mean? And this isn't on that level. But there is an element of me being like, yeah, but it's a new Superman film and it's for my generation.
Yeah.
So I think that just weighs it a lot for me. But we'll see in the critical reception, won't we? Which we can look at now. So I've just looked at it and this is going to be a tight one. I'd be interested to see how it goes. So how do you think it did and what would you personally give it?
So I obviously I've looked at the critical reception some time ago when I thought about putting this on my list. I don't accurately remember what it was, but I thought I just better let you know that because I like to be transparent about this.
Yeah, let's be honest.
Because sometimes I get it bang on and it just feels like, oh, you fucking cheater, you've got the page open right in front of me, but I haven't, I swear. So I think it did, in overall, I think it probably got a high 6, if I remember rightly. What would I give it? I think as a film, it's probably as a film, I think it is a high 6.
Okay.
How much did I enjoy it? At least a 7.5.
Right. Okay.
Maybe a 7.6, 7.7.
Okay. So at the time of recording, on IMDb, this gets 7.1 out of 10.
Okay.
The audience on Rotten Tomatoes give it 75%.
Okay.
But the critics on Rotten Tomatoes give it 56%, which averages out at 67%. So for me, I think this is a solid 7 out of 10 film, and that is underrated. What would you say?
Oh man, it's hard, isn't it? Like I get it. I get that score. I think the critics are being a little bit harsh there, but the way it averages out, I get it. But for me, this is a 7.5 film.
I think it's underrated. I think we've got to say it.
It's underrated. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Man of Steel.
It's our podcast. We can say what we want.
Man of Steel is underrated. Okay, there we go. Man of Steel is underrated. We've said so, and it's our podcast, so shove that up your bollocks. Right, Alice, it is your turn to pick next week. Is it Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice? Could be.
Not yet. Not yet, listeners.
What are we going to be watching next week and talking about next week? What are we going to be Supermaning about?
So I thought it was about time to take a look at another classic film, which is something we like to do every now and then, is watch a film that is regarded as a classic and try and analyse why it's a classic and if it's deserving of that status. We've gone for some pretty old classics in the past.
We have.
But I'm going for a slightly more modern classic of a film that I haven't seen. Josh, I do think you've seen it, and listeners, you've probably seen it too, but this is one that has just completely passed me by. So the film we're going to be watching and analysing next week is Ghostbusters.
Oh, Ghostbusters, eh? And you've never seen that before?
I've never seen it.
Fucking hell, that is a big week. That's a big Man of Steel followed by Ghostbusters. We're going to be people all over us, man. We're going to have all the little internet people coming out going, that's not as we get.
Ghostbusters is underrated. Listen to the format of the podcast.
Yeah, listen to it's just an argument. It's just a brief. Just leave it. God. Anyway, yes, join us next week when we're going to be talking about Ghostbusters as one of our classic films. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com or all the social medias if you just search for Just Films and That, and you'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We're on Patreon as well, so if you want to get a little bit of extra bonus content and support us with a little bit of money every month, it's massively appreciated. Patreon.com/Just Films and That. The links in the episode description. We're also on the television, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. Every Friday from 6 p.m, you can find us on the local TV network. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. I'm also uploading all the episodes onto Dailymotion. So if you want to see exactly what it is we're up to, it's me and Josh talking about all our favourite underrated and unseen films. So if you type in Just Films and That on Dailymotion, you'll be able to see our beautiful, beautiful faces.
Indeed, lots of ways to see us, hear us, get in touch with us, give us a follow and all that. But all that remains to be said is thank you very much for listening to a rather long episode as we talk about Man of Steel. And it's goodbye from me. See you next week. Cheerio.
Bye.